Hey everybody, Spencer Hogan here, BDM with the Fidance. I'm here with my friend Juan Cortes with OPW, a Dover company. He is the director of IT and digital there. Juan, how you doing?
I'm doing well, Spencer. How are you?
Doing well, man. I got lots of energy for you on our call today.
Let's do it. I'm excited.
Appreciate you sharing your time with me, man. I know that you got a lot on your plate these days, and that you're still kind of getting adjusted to the new role, man. So there's three categories of things that I want to hit here. We're going to talk about your kind of your life story, so early life experiences, and we'll talk about your career. Recently, you made a transition. I know that was challenging for you, and then we'll talk about just technology at large, man. So let's talk number one about your early life. Tell me about your early life experiences, your upbringing. How did that shape your perspective on leadership and who you are?
Yeah, it's funny. I was a pretty shy person early life. High school, very introverted. Didn't do a lot of sports. Hung around the neighborhood. So for me, joining the military was really the biggest part of my journey as becoming an adult. The military, particularly boot camp, and the mentality of being in an organization that's very service oriented really kind of, I think in many ways, prepped me to be in IT. I honestly didn't think that this would be the career path for me. But looking back now, particularly in boot camp, they really drive this idea of the organization is more important than the individual, right? The mission, it's the term they use in the military. The mission is more important than the individual. So it does create, from an early start in my military career, this concept of servant leadership was something that was kind of driven into us. The other thing that was really kind of another major component is this idea that in a large organization, one individual can't contribute a lot, but a group of individuals working together have this multiplying effect. And so I think the other thing that it did for me early on was this concept of teamwork, reinforcing this concept of you're part of a greater team, and if you're going to be part of a team, you have to learn how to work with other people, and you have to learn how to complement each other's skill sets, right? And because the military, you generally change roles every 2 years, you end up having changed teams quite a bit. So it really, for me, like I said, just thinking back, I think it just created this understanding of the dynamic of serving others and working together. And that's really, I think, helped me throughout my technology career afterwards.
Thanks for sharing there, man. I never knew that you were in the military.
Yeah. I did 22 years service, 6 years active duty, and then 16 in the reserves. And I was really blessed because I started as a enlisted, went in as an E1, and then I got lucky. I was able to get my commission right after getting my college degree, and I spent my last 10 years as an officer in the intelligence community. So yeah, I had a very lucky run. Loved it. I've been retired now for over 10 years. So yeah, I do miss it every once in a while.
Good for you, man. Well, thank you for your service there. That's
My pleasure.
that's awesome. Did you grow up in Cincinnati? Where are you from?
Yeah, so I was born in New Haven, Connecticut, but I moved to Cincinnati when I was 4. And I've lived here now effectively 50 years. So I consider myself a native. Went to school in Mount Healthy, and then went to college at UC after I finished up my active duty tour.
Good for you. Good for you, man. Thanks for sharing. Tell me a bit more about your career. And you could, of course, you can lump your military career into this as well. I know you're talking a lot about teamwork and
Yeah.
accomplishing the mission. Tell me just about a pivotal moment in your career that significantly contributed to your growth as a leader.
Yeah, so I'll hit those two separately. So background, I actually got introduced in IT while I was in the Navy. The ship that I was on, it was one of the first ships that had a file server kind of set up, right? We had a server, we had PCs and key departments. And at that time, the military didn't have IT professionals. My job was then was electronics technician. So I worked on radar communications and SATCOM units. And so I was, hey, we need somebody to support this when we're out at sea. And it was me. So interestingly enough, that's where I was introduced to IT. And later on, I kind of looked back at that time and realized I really liked doing that work. So that's kind of how I got into IT. It was really in the military though. When I got my first job, it kind of clicked. So my first job was a mainframe operator. I worked for a company called Hammacher Schlemmer. You may remember way back when, there used to be a time where you would get on the airplane and there would be this magazine, Sky Mall, and you could buy all this kind of crazy stuff. And Hammacher Schlemmer was one of the sections in that Sky Mall magazine. And so our organization basically was a catalog company. We sold kind of higher end items, and they had an HP 1000 mainframe. And so I was going to school during the day, and then they had this second shift where you would go in, you would switch out the big round tapes, because at night they did a lot of the batch processing. So that was my gig for like the first 2 years was mainframe tape changer, and then I moved into PC support. So I started fixing the PCs because we had a help desk there, a call center actually there that ran 2 shifts. And so that's kind of how I really got into IT. And then right around that time is when I decided to change my degree because I had started school as an electrical engineer and I switched it to information systems because back then it wasn't even IT, it was information systems. So yeah, so that's kind of how I had my start. I got really lucky, and right around the second year I was at Hammacher Schlemmer, Procter & Gamble changed the way it was doing its PC support. They had outsourced it to IBM for several years, and they ended up canceling that that agreement, and they ended up deciding to insource IT. And so they went in this mass hiring around, gosh, it was in '97, I think. And I was lucky enough to get picked up. I ended up working in the Mason facility, and it was an interesting role. You did help desk for a couple of days a week, and then you were assigned a group of customers, and then you were kind of their IT consultant. So sometimes I set up PCs for new employees. Sometimes I talked to them about, what solutions or help them figure out the next application they needed to get. Or, I would do project management when we were rolling out back then. It was like what, Windows 95, I think, or maybe it was XP. So it was a really interesting role, right? I did help desk, I did desktop support, and then I did a little bit of consulting. And it's ironic now that I think back at my career, IT operations, project management, and business relationship management are things that I've done across my career now in lots of different levels. Unfortunately, at P&G, they changed their mind about 5 years later, went back to outsourcing. And so then I went to HP. I didn't last long there. And so I ended up moving on. I won't go through all of them, but I ended up going to an international company called Givaudan Flavors, did project management primarily there. And then I got lucky, was able to move to Kroger, spent 6 years at Kroger. And that's the project where, we talk about this pivotal moment. So I was basically assigned a project that had been underway for some time, that had already been over budget and had already missed its deadline. And the organization was starting to lose kind of patience with the project team because it was an expensive project. We were touching all 2,700 stores. And so, I walk in as the new PM trying to get my arms around what's going on. And, and I found a very defeated team. And I was, we were struggling to understand what was going on. And what ended up happening is, the CIO at the time kind of, after the second, big change request, kind of set a deadline. He's like, you have to have everything done within, I think it was a November deadline, and I came onto the project around April. And, if it's not done by that point, there will be consequences, right? And so we were trying to convert 2,700 stores, and the team was struggling because they just could not get more than 50 stores converted a week. And so you get in, you start looking around, start asking lots of questions. And finally, after about a month, we could replicate the 50, and I was pretty confident. So I redid the entire project plan, presented it to my team, and my team's like, you cannot go to senior management with this because we're going to miss their deadline. And I'm like, guys, with all due respect, if we don't go and tell the truth and just show them that we can do it, I said, we're never going to get their confidence, and we will have failed before we got started, right? And it was a leap of faith on my part because I wasn't sure if the CIO was not going to yell at me. So I go to this meeting, I walk him through the project plan, I show him that, hey, we've been able to do these 50 conversions, and this is the date, and the date's going to be December, I can't remember the date, let's just pretend it's December 20th. So we're going to need 4 more weeks, but we're confident that we can complete the project and get everything by that date. But we will need a little extension on time, and we will need a little bit more money because we were using contractors to help us, right? It was a very big effort, right? So we were sending trainers and things like that. And I remember the CIO, and I'm sitting there, I'm like, okay, here it comes. He just smiles at me. He's like, yeah, do it. Okay. And so I'm like kind of taken aback, and I'm like, wait a minute, I was worried, that because of what I've heard. And he's like, listen, I set a deadline because I needed for them to take serious. I said, but it wasn't, the reality is we want to get this project done intelligently, right? And so for me, it was this moment of clarity. It's like, oh, okay, one, don't take people literal. And two, even if you have bad news, if you come with data and you come with a plan, in many cases, people are going to accept that and move on, right? And so it's a little hard for technologists because we get so solution focused, and we're a breed of people that like to delight our customers. So when we feel like we're going to miss, we all of a sudden become our own worst enemy. And I remember coming back and telling my team, and they're like, how'd it go? I said, it's great. He approved it. And they're like, are you kidding me? I'm like, no, guys. And you feel bad for them because they had suffered for such a long time thinking that, and so, yeah, it's just, for me, it was this huge lesson on, technology is difficult. It's hard to make plans, even with the most intelligent people on there. But as long as you're thoughtful, you're honest, and you come with data and you present it in a way that people can understand it, in many cases, that allows you to get past, the disappointment of not meeting a deadline or being more expensive. And, internally, the leadership team realized that this project was really aggressive. At that time, it was, I think, the biggest IT project they had ever done because we were touching every store. So yeah, for me, really great life moment. It's given me courage, through the rest of my career when something didn't feel right or where I felt like, there wasn't enough information for me to kind of step up and do the extra analysis or speak up, right? Versus, not either saying something or just, pretending that something is better than it really is, because, I think in those cases when things go really, really south and people start losing appreciation of your integrity and your willingness to be an honest partner.
Really good insight there. I think there's some wisdom to be had too with so much fear around being honest and direct about the situation and making assumptions too of what the leader is going to say instead of giving them a chance to respond the right way. There's an assumption they're going to respond the wrong way, and trusting that hey, this is the situation. This is how we can accomplish this. How we can get past this. I think there's a lot of wisdom to be had there with don't make assumptions about what they're going to do. Just be honest and present good data and bring a solution. Great stuff, man.
Yeah, and I think the thing for me, what I tell my team is trust your spidey sense. If something is tingling because you see something, you say something, because generally most of us have a pretty good read on what's going on, and our inner voices, they're generally on point. I think so many times people just get afraid of saying something because they don't want to be the bearer of bad news. But in many cases, if you see something or you recognize something, saying something allows us to just attack it early. And when you do that, again, it just makes things so much easier. Than there's nothing worse than having an after action and they're like, yeah, well, I thought that was going to break. And it's like, yeah, well, then it broke. And then we're all dealing with the aftermath. It's like, man, I sure wish you would have spoken up. We'd saved a lot of tears. So yeah, that's for me, it's like I tell my team, trust yourselves, just speak up because your instincts are probably right on.
You probably do though a little bit now. Tell me about your new role with OPW, and tell me about the challenges you're having with that, how you're navigating people. Tell me just about that role.
Yeah. So the new role is exciting. So OPW is headquartered in Cincinnati. It's one of 17 divisions in a larger organization called Dover. Dover Corporation is about $10 billion a year, Fortune 500. Our division is about 900 million to a billion, right in that range. We manufacture valves, piping, gauges, solutions to transfer fluids from one part of the building to another. And we do it in a lot of different ways. We have 4 business segments. First segment is car wash, so using water to wash cars, reclaiming that water, recycling it. Segment is, and one most people will probably see in their day-to-day lives, is fluid transfer solutions. If you look at the gas handle, the next time you pump your, you put gas in your car, you'll probably see OPW on that handle. We make a lot of them. And then we have two other businesses, one that focuses on clean energy, so the movement of liquid hydrogen, liquid oxygen, liquid, natural gas, between, locations. And then the last one is propane. So, so think about all the valves, all the flanges, the gauges, the things that you use to manage the control systems, to manage those kinds of things. So it's a manufacturing company. It's global. Although I have 4 business segments inside that umbrella, they actually break out to 18 companies. So a lot of moving parts. I'm now at month 5, and I think I have all the acronyms down for the names of the companies and what they do and where they're at, right? And that was, I think, the biggest challenge in the beginning. Is I went from an organization, Skidmore, that had 4 companies, but they did the same thing nearly everywhere. They just focused on a little different part of their product line. Whereas here, it's really 4 very unique businesses that have some common engineering functionality in there. And so, coming up to speed with that. The role is exciting for me because it took me a little while in my career to figure out that IT operations is what I live and thrive at. And this is exactly what that role is. I have 11 great people working on my team, and our job is to keep the business running. So we have a very large number of third-party vendors that provide us a lot of support, HCL, TCS, very long list. And we also have a Dover IT corporate team that kind of looking strategically, but my team's responsibility is day in and day out keeping the organization running. The company has been in a bit of a buying spree. So one of my biggest challenges is I have I think 10 ERP systems right now. We just moved. And so because they bought a lot of companies up, and each of those companies come with their own set of software, part of my job is keeping them alive and then slowly moving all of them to our main platform. So yeah, super exciting. Very firefighting is a little bit of what I like doing. I like to be in the middle of what's going on, and so I'm getting a lot of that. So yeah, it's been great. I'm thrilled to be here. And it's keeping me busy. I probably haven't worked this hard in a long time. Probably at Kroger's the last time I've been putting in the hours I've been putting in, but that's fine. What I find is if you love what you do, you really don't mind the hours, because it's just, and that's how I feel. I mean, I walk in every morning like, yeah, what's next? Let's go do it. So it's exciting.
It's awesome, man. Procter and Gamble to OPW, long journey there. How has the industry evolved over the years?
Man, I think the
It's a
biggest
hard
thing
question.
is, yeah. So I think the thing that I was thinking about when I read this, the interview questions when you sent it to me, was the number of applications, the number of technology solutions has just proliferated over my career, right? And I think that is the thing today that is the scariest, because once upon a time, maybe there were 4 or 5 solutions to solve a business problem. Now there are literally hundreds. And with AI and it's Genesis. I mean, last year, I think it's like maybe, 12, 14 months ago, it felt like there was maybe 30, 40 AI solutions. Now there's over 100, right? And it grows on a regular basis. So I think the biggest thing, from my point of view for technologists is the number of solutions that are available to apply to a business problem. So what that really forces us to do is to really understand what we're trying to solve versus being enamored by the technology. And that is, I think, the thing that I kind of always encourage is like, guys, let's start with the business problem. Don't talk to me about the solution. Don't talk to me about the technology. Start with the business problem, because if we get a really good understanding of the business problem, and then we move into requirements, all of a sudden, those two pieces will allow us to start filtering down all the technology options out there and start narrowing it so that we can then do an intelligent search. Because compared to 25 years ago, it's just so much more technology available, which can be really hard because you're now in a kind of analysis paralysis, because you could spend quite some time just looking at every little thing. Yeah, so that to me is like the biggest thing, because it's it's pretty pervasive.
We just did a presentation for an executive roundtable group organization, a bunch of different groups, and one of the points that we made is if you can think of, oh, I wonder if a software exists for that, it probably exists for that, and there's probably a dozen options for that one thing. It's honestly exhausting from a leadership perspective. Just choosing solutions, analysis by paralysis is a great way of putting it. I mean, it's shocking what's out there, and the parsing through the differences between the different products can be nauseating, we'll call it. So
and I think what people kind of forget too is, because you have all these solution items, options, and many of them now in the cloud, the biggest spend isn't the solution, it's the integration of that solution to everything else in your enterprise, right? And that's the other thing that I think is caught me. It's one of the things every year I'm like, wow, I can't believe how much money and how important it is to connect systems together. And it's expensive because you have cloud environments of all types, of all kinds of configurations. And so, back in the olden days, we had the enterprise service bus, right? That was the magical thing that was going to allow us to do this, inside of our data centers. Now there's this, you need to find a solution that allows you to do that across the entire cloud. And because of just the complexity, it's just so much harder, right? It's, so yeah, that's the other thing that, with lots of opportunities for applications, you have to have a pretty flexible way to connect all those together. So yeah.
Are there any trends in technology that folks should be paying attention to?
Well, I mean, AI is like the biggest one, right? We'll talk about, absolutely. Security is always another one that you always have to stay on top of. I think the other thing that I try to stay aware of more than I have in the past is, where are my application roadmaps going, right? I'm trying to do a better job of meeting with my vendors and staying connected to them, so that where they're going in the industry, I understand and I can forecast where I'm going to need to be. Not doing that, I think you put yourself in the risk that you are building a lot of things into a solution that solution may be pivoting in a different direction, right? And so, that's the other thing that I've spent a lot more time in is vendor management and just understanding where they're going with my key technologies, right? So that I can kind of forecast my vision of where I think I need to go and whether or not a technology is moving in the same direction or potentially moving in a different direction. And if that's the case, I need to be thoughtful about, okay, well, how much more do I continue investing in that technology, and when do I need to start pivoting to something different, right? The whole VMware and licensing change is a great example. If you're not sure what's going on, or you're not keeping your ears to the ground and having good conversations, it can catch you by surprise, right? And my understanding is they had been communicating this change for quite some time. It's just a lot of people just weren't talking to them, and so they kind of got caught, um, they got surprised. So yeah, those are the places I would spend. And I'm not going to talk about AI because I think a lot of people already talk a lot about it. It is important. There's still quite a bit going on there. Our organization has taken a very conservative approach to AI, just because they're kind of waiting to see how everything kind of shakes out.
Yeah, I think in my experience, usually the technologists are the ones that are tired of talking about artificial intelligence,
Yeah,
and yeah. So, well, great insight and great interview, Juan. Thank you so much for your time.
my pleasure. Thank you.